You ever notice how some of the biggest relationship issues that can come in, infiltrate a relationship and ruin it, come from things that feel completely justified? The little things like irritation or anger, a need to be heard, to be right, to be validated, or maybe just taking things personally. Today we're going to talk about how the ego ruins relationships. Hey everybody, my name is Peter. I run a coaching company where we help people work through the limiting beliefs that cause anxiety, self-sabotage, and emotional burnout. We also help people heal from difficult or traumatic memories that are still affecting their relationships. And today I want to talk to you about something that hijacks love more than almost anything else, but we don't realize it. And that is our ego. You've probably had moments where you've replayed an argument in your head for hours, maybe even days, like the shower thoughts, sitting there replaying, saying, this is what I should have said. I would have got him, right? Saying all the perfect things that you wish you had said in the moment. You keep making your point over and over and over, imagining how the other person would react. Maybe you'd finally feel understood. Maybe they'd finally admit that they were wrong. And that feels good, right? And we all know that having gotcha moments feels satisfying in the moment, but what's really happening is the ego part of you. The ego is fueling itself with emotional reactivity and self-righteousness. Here's the issue, is that the ego doesn't actually want peace. It wants superiority. The ego wants to be better than or more right than the other person. And it will use even your pain to get to that feeling. Because the ego doesn't care. This is different than the subconscious. The ego jumps in not to protect you, but to create a story, a narrative where you are the wounded hero and they are the villain. And then you start living inside that story. As Eckhart Tolle puts it, there is no problem without a story. And there's no, you're not wrong and I'm not right. This just is what is. The ego can't leave things as they are. It needs a narrative where somebody's the hero and somebody's the villain. And almost always it's a distortion of what actually happened. This is why we go through things like horribilizing. When somebody goes through a breakup and they feel like the breakup has to be justified somehow. And so they start horribilizing the other person. That's the ego saying, I need justification. I need reason, rationale to break up with this person because otherwise everybody's going to hate me. Does that make sense? Let me give you another example. Let's say somebody interrupts you mid-sentence and your immediate thought is, wow, they don't even respect me. What if somebody's scrolling through their phone while you're talking to them? It's like, am I boring? Like you'd rather scroll than be here with me, be present? They say, I'll call you later, but then they don't. And now in your head, you're thinking, did I do something wrong? Are they pulling away? Should I be pulling away too? Should I pull back? All of these are stories. They're not facts. And your nervous system doesn't know the difference. Your nervous system is in charge of feeling, tactile feeling, but also emotional feeling. And so when you believe these stories, you don't just feel misunderstood. Your nervous system starts feeling unsafe. And you start reacting, not responding. You become very defensive, passive-aggressive, anxious, or avoidant, all in the name of this relationship, all in the name of love. I personally take things personally. I become defensive really, really quick because when somebody says, hey, why are you doing it this way? Then the story that I tell myself is they don't like me because they don't like my way of doing something. And I've realized that taking things personally has really been a hindrance in my relationships, not just like romantic relationships, but even with my friends. Taking things personally and becoming defensive has really made me somebody that I don't like being around. And that's because it's not love, it's actually fear. And we disguise that fear as righteousness. I want you to imagine this. I want you to think about two different people, and one is the thinker. They are present, curious, and aware. And the other one is the reactor. And under the reactor, you say, triggered, they're story-driven, they're defensive. I was a reactor for a long time. This is what the ego does. The ego takes what happens and then adds commentary. It doesn't just observe and say, yeah, I guess that happened. It says, people always do this. People never treat me the way I deserve. I guess I just care more than they do. Man, nobody cares the way I do. I used to say that phrase all the time. I used to say, I don't feel like anybody is invested in me as much as I'm invested in them. Each of those thoughts is a subtle attempt to make yourself superior. It doesn't make you feel superior, though. It just feels like you're hurt. Going back to Eckhart Tolle, he says the ego doesn't recognize suffering as suffering. It thinks that these emotional reactions are justified or even virtuous. But really, they're just forms of unconscious pain, which is why the ego is so hard to spot. It convinces you that it's protecting you, that it's important, but really it's just feeding itself. There's another quote by Alan Watts, I think, said it. He says that the fastest way to frustrate the ego is when there's no longer any story where you oppose the other, where you make yourself feel superior to the other. Then there's no more food for the ego anymore. Starve the ego. In other words, peace is really boring to the ego. And I had a huge ego. This is another example of this. I had a really, really huge ego for a really long time. And I remember going from a dramatic relationship to dramatic relationship to dramatic relationship. And then finally I started dating the girl that I ended up marrying. And I remember just thinking, this is kind of boring. This is kind of a boring relationship. But also acknowledging, because I was helping people with relationships and seeing a lot about relationships, I was like, okay, this is a boring relationship. That means it's safe, which means the ego isn't happy. Because the ego doesn't want safety or peace. The ego wants presence. It wants drama. It wants identity, right? It wants all of the things that I had before. And now I have a peaceful, non-dramatic relationship. But the ego wants to be the one that's always right. And if there's no conflict, then you're never right. You're never wrong. The ego wants to be hurt. And if things are peaceful, you're not going to be hurt. The ego wants to be seen as doing more, sacrificing more. Or if you could get yourself to stop telling damaging stories, then the brain's like, oh, I don't need to sacrifice more in order to be enough, in order to be okay. Also, if these ideas are resonating with you and you want personal application, feel free to check out the link in the description to schedule an appointment with me. Whether you're navigating conflict or breakups or money issues or trust issues, I'd be happy to help you untangle the ego. What's the ego? What's truth? And how to actually move forward. Okay, so how do we stop the ego from running our relationship? We can start by noticing the stories that we're telling ourselves. We can ask something like, what is actually happening right now? Without the narrative, what's actually happening? What emotion am I feeling in my body? Am I adding commentary? Am I adding negative commentary to what's going on? Is my commentary preventing me from seeing the truth of what's going on? Presence gives you clarity. Ego gives you chaos. Eckhart Tolle once described the ego as the heavy me. The heavy version of me, the weight that we carry around when we're trying to be right, we're trying to be significant, we're trying to be in control. When we drop the story, we drop the weight. And what's left is us in the present moment, at peace. And when you're truly present, there's no story to protect, no point to prove, just a human relating to another human. There was another quote by Alan Watts that I really liked that said, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Sometimes I think we're trying to clear out the water by shaking a jar of mud, and we don't let things settle. You don't always have to confront things. Sometimes you just have to stop stirring the water. Tolle says that people live unconsciously. They don't even know that their stories are their stories. He also said it's an automatic process of ego inflation. It's conditioned. It's learned. It's part of the structure of the mind. When you or your partner gets stuck in loops of blame, it's not because you're bad people. It's because this is how the mind was trained. This is how it was trained to protect itself, even when it causes more harm than good. I believe that this is why Jesus said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It means seeing clearly, dropping the unnecessary baggage, and moving because of truth, not because of ego. I think that Jesus was a really good example of being able to say, I don't need to prove anything here. I don't need to be in control here, because he was in control. And the less we feel the need to control our circumstances, the more in control we are. And so Jesus, acknowledging that everybody around him was kind of acting unconsciously, freed him from resentment, frustration, all of those other things. And so if your relationships feel heavy, ask yourself, am I reacting to this moment or to a story that I've created around it? Am I reacting to what's actually happening or the commentary in my head? Because real love doesn't need superiority. Real love doesn't need to keep score. Real love isn't about being right or being in control. It's about being present with that person. And the more present you become, the more peace enters your relationships. This is all stuff that I'm working really hard to apply. I feel like the best way to learn it is to teach it. And so thanks so much for watching. I hope this gave you some clarity, and I hope you have an amazing day. Again, if you want any personalized application when it comes to relationships, money, feeling like you're in control, anxiety, or even just traumatic memories, feel free to fill out the link in the description, and I'd be more than happy to help you out in any way that I can. Have an awesome day.